Hey guys, it's Allie and I'm back today with another video for you guys. I'm sure you all read the title of this. This is the first time I'm sharing about this on social media and I still haven't even told some of my family and friends. But back in March at the age of 24, I received a diagnosis for autism and I found out that I am actually autistic. So today I want to share my autism diagnosis story with you and also kind of my journey through mental health. If you're already a subscriber, welcome back. Thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting me. And if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button, especially if you ran across this video because you're researching autism or autism in women, because I am really excited to make some more videos in the future. As far back as I can remember, literally my first memories of childhood, going to grade school, I remember having really bad anxiety. At the time, I didn't really know what was going on and I think I just thought that that was normal. But now looking back, I can recognize that I was having separation anxiety. I was having very bad intrusive thoughts. My bus ride was so long because I live in the country, and the whole way to school, I would like imagine my parents dying, or I would see my house on fire. I would have this impending feeling of doom that something had happened at home. I was very obsessive with checking my homework folder, making sure I had everything done, my agenda signed. I was so worried about forgetting. I had this overwhelming need for perfection. We had these little strips and I remember being terrified of my strip ever getting turned. My strip was never turned, except one time my teacher turned my strip on accident because she thought that I had forgotten my homework, but actually my homework was in my backpack and I just had grabbed the wrong folder to my desk. I full on meltdown crying, and then we found my homework. It was fine. She flipped my strip back, but like, it was the end of the world for me to have a yellow strip, and I was literally a kindergartner. Like, I think I was like 5. So even though it sounds like I was really struggling as a kid, I don't think anyone really knew for the longest time because most of my struggles I really kept inside. I don't think I was ever expressing that to others because I didn't know it wasn't normal because I was a child, and that's all I've ever known. So I feel like it took me years and years to kind of realize, okay, something's off. And then that's when everyone was like, oh, you have anxiety. And from here on out, everything had just always been labeled as anxiety. So then as I continued to get older, my anxiety just got worse and worse. I started piano lessons and I had super bad anxiety when we did piano recitals. My parents tried to switch me teachers and we switched doing recitals at the old folks home. I still blacked out or fainted anytime I had to play in front of anybody, even if it was like 5 little old ladies. And so finally my parents were like, okay, you can quit. You have to play one last time at the church and then you can be done. And that's the only time I ever made it through a song. And afterwards I went outside and I had a panic attack. And then in middle school I started doing sports. I remember throwing up often at track meets or before basketball games and hyperventilating, which continued on into high school. And then I started high school. Again, same thing. It got to the point where I was taking college speech as a junior in high school and I could not get through my speeches and I was not going to pass the class, and I was first of my class. I was going to be valedictorian, so there was no way that I could not get an A in this class. I was bound and determined to get an A, even though I was really struggling. Like, it was physically impossible for me to give a speech. I would just sit down in the middle of my speech. I had no idea what was going on. I wouldn't remember. There was one time that I completely blacked out. I couldn't see anything. They took me to the nurse's office. So my parents took me to the doctor and they prescribed me beta blockers and just said, oh, you just have anxiety. And I did end up making it through speech. I got an A, but it was really rough. So in high school, I went to a really small town high school and I was valedictorian of my class. I was teacher's pet, I was a goody two-shoes, and I really didn't fit in anywhere. I feel like I didn't fit in with the popular kids, but I was pretty and I was smart and I was active in a lot of things, and I came from a nice family, so I looked like the popular kids, but they didn't like me. And then I didn't fit in with the weird kids because they just thought I was a popular kid, and I was just right in the middle of everything and I didn't fit in. Now looking back, I realized that there was a lot more going on than I even understood. I was kind of in my own little autistic world and I had absolutely no idea. So then after high school, I went to the local JUCO at Hutchinson Community College. I was still living at home. I was still having some really bad anxiety. I remember the first day of class, I was like an hour early and I went and found my classroom, and then I didn't want to be weird and too early, so I sat in the bathroom for like 45 minutes, but I also didn't want to be weird and get caught in the bathroom, so I like sat up on the toilet so no one could see my feet and like hid in there. But I went to HCC on a scholarship to do photography and be part of the magazine team, and then I ended up working for the athletic department and doing all the athletic photos. So I feel like photography was really a social crutch for me, and it was also a social crutch for me in high school as well. But in college, like, I was meeting people. I knew all the athletes, and it's a very small college, but I was meeting people because I was doing photography, and I was kind of able to hide behind that, and people wanted to talk to me because they wanted photos. Now looking back, I realized that That's not what was happening. I was not making friends. A lot of the friendships I had at that time were very toxic. They were very manipulative, and I have a lot of trauma from that time from some things that happened, which is a topic we will get into another day. But I was just happy to have friends and have people to talk to, and people invited me out, and I went to parties, but I didn't drink, and that made me stick out like a sore thumb. So I still was so out of place everywhere. I did meet my fiance Gary at Hutchinson Community College, and then the following year I went to Fort Hays State University, and he went to play baseball at SEMO in Missouri. And so we were doing long distance for the first time. I was living on my own away from home for the first time. I was also in like a basement, like ground level, dark apartment, which was probably terrible for my mental health. And I had gone through a friend breakup with my ex-best friend. So I was kind of really going through it. And during this time, my mental health was the worst it's ever been in my whole entire life. And I kind of just attributed it to all those factors. All these crazy things started happening, and I wasn't able to sleep. I was having nightmares, night terrors, sleep paralysis. I couldn't stay awake during the day. I was napping all day. I was barely managing to eat, do homework, and make it to work. I was crying all the time. Like, I was crying every day, multiple times a day, and it was not because I was sad or because something happened or because all of a sudden I got upset. There was no emotions behind it. I would just all of a sudden burst into tears, like hysterical crying. I was starting to have panic attacks, which I'd had panic attacks in the past, but usually from anxiety. But I was having panic attacks daily or weekly, kind of depending on what was going on. Randomly, I was just having them. I also was starting to have really, really bad intrusive thoughts. I would not make it to class on time because I would go back to my apartment multiple times to make sure my door was locked, or to make sure my oven was off, even though I never used my oven, to make sure my hair straightener was off, even though I never straighten my hair in the morning. Also, it got so bad that I was leaving in the middle of class because I was having these intrusive thoughts that somebody has stolen my car, my house is on fire, and like I have 2 cats, so I have to go save them. I was having all these weird things happen, but I still just thought, oh, it's anxiety, my anxiety is really bad. And I kind of started to think, well, maybe this is depression because I was crying a lot, but I also didn't feel sad, and I didn't have feelings of like hopelessness. When I went home at semester for Christmas break, I let my parents know, hey, something's going on, I'm not doing well at all. We looked into doing therapy, but that didn't really work with my schedule at the time. So instead I just decided, oh, I'll go get some anxiety medication, figure out something that'll make me feel better, get me back on track, and then I'll be fine. I went to the local like mental health clinic or whatever. They prescribed me anxiety medication. Literally in 5 minutes they wrote me a prescription. They didn't talk to me, they didn't ask me any questions like they should have. And then I had terrible side effects to the prescription. So I went back in, they wrote me another one, terrible side effects, went back in, they wrote me one for antidepressants, terrible side effects, and it was so expensive. I would go in, I would pay for an appointment that would take like 1 minute. She would just write me a new prescription, and I would pay like $100 for her to do that on top of paying for the medication. And no one was helping me, no one was asking me questions, no one even was. It was awful. I ended up surviving the year, thank goodness. I went home for the summer, moved back into my parents' house, and then the following year, my boyfriend and my sister both came to Fort Hays, and I lived with my sister, saw my boyfriend every day. He played baseball there, and I felt so much better. And when I say better, I mean like back to normal, back to, oh, I just have anxiety. I have anxiety all the time. That's just how I am. And then I ended up graduating. COVID hit, of course. Gary got an extra year of eligibility for baseball. So then I was there, and instead of getting a job because of COVID, I just started my own business from home. So everything was going pretty good. And then the next year, Carrie moved to Colorado. I moved back home, not in my parents' house, but in this house down the road from them. And then Gary is back home in his parents' house in Kansas City. And at this time I was so ready to move. I was ready to have my own house again. And then all of a sudden I got settled in here, and I started to feel bad again, like really bad. And it was really hard to describe because it finally kind of clicked in my head that I don't feel anxious and I don't feel like I'm having anxiety, but I just feel really bad. I was having all these crazy like mental health symptoms just clear across the board. Like I was having anxiety symptoms, I was having OCD symptoms, I was having ADHD symptoms, I was having PTSD symptoms. So I was like just having a mix of everything, and I was like, what is going on with me? It finally got to the point where I was like, either I'm clinically insane or like I have a brain tumor and it's like a health issue. I was like, something is seriously wrong. I decided to go see a therapist, and I thought, well, maybe it's PTSD from that trauma from JUCO a couple years ago. Because a lot of the things I was experiencing can be symptoms of PTSD. So I was like, maybe it's just PTSD. So I went, saw a therapist, loved her, she was amazing. I was diagnosed with PTSD, and we did EMDR therapy to process that trauma. And I loved EMDR therapy. I will have to do some videos on that in the future. I loved it. I swear by it. It worked for me. It was amazing. I felt so much better afterwards, but I only felt better in regards to how I felt about the trauma. Like, the trauma was no longer as traumatizing. Like, it's not as distressing to talk about. I kind of got over a lot of the negative beliefs that I had felt with it. It didn't make me feel better about all the other things that were going on. I was like, okay, I feel better about the trauma. What is going on? Something is still wrong. And I kept telling everybody, I feel bad. I just feel bad. And everyone kept saying, what does bad mean? Like, what does bad mean? Like, explain it. And I was like, I don't know. I just feel bad. I just feel bad. That's the only word I had to explain it. Then I was like, well, maybe I have ADHD, because PTSD and ADHD can look a lot alike. My executive functioning is horrible. Time management was horrible. Can't concentrate, can't remember things, foggy brain. I've been diagnosed with anxiety and PTSD, but I never had been evaluated for anything else. And I was like, if there's something else going on, how would anyone know? Because no one ever asked me any questions. So I went and I found a psychiatrist that could do a psychological evaluation on me. She could diagnose me with whatever. Then I was thinking, oh, it's just ADHD. And while I was trying to do research on the way I was feeling and the things that were happening, I kept running across all this information about autism in women. I ran across this article about how autism presents in females and how the experience feels to be an autistic female. And I have never related to anything more in my entire life. I read it and I was like, everything I have felt that I haven't been able to put into words, that I haven't been able to explain, that I thought nobody else could understand, I was like, it explained everything. And I was like, there's no way it's autism, because what I thought of autism was what many of you probably think of, the stereotypical way that the media portrays it, which is completely inaccurate. And I had no idea. I didn't picture myself or anyone like me. So I kind of pushed it off to the side, and I was in the process of waiting to get in with the psychiatrist, but she took me on as a new client, so I just had to wait a few weeks. I just couldn't shake the feeling that I was onto something. But then I was like, you know what? I have taken every mental health assessment, like an online quiz, which I know those aren't super accurate, but I had taken everything under the sun. I'd never taken any kind of online assessment for autism. Autism isn't even a mental health disorder. And this whole time I was thinking it's just mental health. So anyways, I was like, I wonder what would happen if I took an autism assessment online. I think it's called Discover Autism. I don't know. I'll link the tests below. But they have a bunch of tests. They're fairly accurate in my opinion. I took the first test and it scored me as autistic. And I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. And so then I took another one, same thing. I took another one, same thing. I took another one, same thing. And I took one, and finally it scored me not autistic. And then I realized I read how to score it, I read it backwards, because they're all a little different. It's kind of confusing. And then I was like, oh wait, actually, this one still scored me as autistic. So then I was like, maybe I'm reading the questions wrong, because the questions are a little vague, they're a little confusing. And so I was like, maybe I'm kind of framing them wrong as like how I'm thinking of scenarios in my head. So I was like, let me take it all again and frame the questions differently. Took them all again, framed the questions differently, it still scored the same. So I was like, I've got to go back and I've got to just research it. I've got to figure this out. I've got to figure out for myself what I think. I watched every single video on YouTube. I did tons of research. I read tons of articles. I read tons of studies. I had this whole binder. Like, I researched the crap out of it. And I was like, it's got to be that. It has got to be that. It makes so much sense. I just didn't know what it was until I researched it. And that's the sad thing, is most people don't actually know what it is. It's not talked about, it's not represented, but I still kept doubting myself because I feel like I needed the validation from a professional, just because I was like, what if I'm wrong? And then I went in and I told the lady, I was like, you might think I'm crazy, but I was like, I think I actually might be autistic and it's not ADHD. And I was like, here's a binder, here's why, like, here's everything you need to know. We did a bunch of sessions and it took a couple months for me to get a diagnosis. She had to get to know me. She talked to my sister and Gary and my mom. The way she told me she did the evaluation was, she said she tried her best to rule out autism. Since I came in saying, I think I'm autistic, and here's all the evidence of here's why I think, she said she took the stance of here's why I think you're not. And she tried to rule it out, and she tried to say like, oh, it's just anxiety, or it's just anxiety and ADHD, or it's just trauma and PTSD. And she said she couldn't rule it out. So now I have my diagnosis. It's confusing and you have to process it, and it's a lot, but overall I was super excited and so relieved, because I feel like finally I have answers to everything that was going on, and it makes sense. And I finally feel satisfied with, oh, that's what it is. I no longer feel like something else is going on. Why is this happening? It explains everything. And also, I finally have the answers on how to fix some of the things I was struggling with, because it's kind of like having the wrong user manual for your brain and your body. and things that you thought would help don't work for you, because those would help a neurotypical person. I feel like I can finally accept myself. I'm actually not crazy. I'm actually just a normal autistic person. So that's pretty much the whole story. I didn't really get into what autism is. That's a whole nother video for another time. If you've made it this far, I just want to remind you to be accepting and open to learning. I was overlooked for so many years, so if I could just help one person not be overlooked, that would be like the best thing ever. But thank you guys for watching. Thank you if you've made it this far. If you like this video or you want to show some support and some love, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to follow me on TikTok and Instagram at Allie Schweizer, and you can follow my small business at Shop Owls and Pearl. Also, I'm gonna link my sweatshirt down below. It's from Etsy. It says neurodiversity is beautiful. I love you all. I'll see you next time. Bye.